Hi there, welcome to Floating Your Dreams. This is going to be another video in eyeshadow palette month, and today we're talking about my top 10 favorite monochromatic eyeshadow palettes. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is another installment of eyeshadow palette month, which we're doing every single day, all month in August. So I hope you're here for it. I am certainly super excited filming all of these videos for you and just chatting about one of my favorite things, which is eyeshadow and eyeshadow palettes. So let's just get to it. Today we're doing monochromatic eyeshadow palettes. Before we get into it, it may be good to know who I am if you're unfamiliar with my content. My name is Micah. I have fair skin with a cool neutral undertone, and this of course influences how I feel about makeup. I love eyeshadow palettes, accessories, and getting the use out of my makeup, and I've been reviewing for makeup for a while now. So I hope you're here for it and want to hear all my thoughts. So I don't think I've ever done this before. There's a lot of content I've already made with eyeshadow palettes, but I don't think I've ever talked about all of the monochromatic eyeshadow palettes that I love. So what do I consider a monochromatic eyeshadow palette? This definitely comes down to a type of color story. That's what I'm thinking of. It can be colorful, it can also be neutral, but for me, a monochromatic color story is a color story that centers around one tone and that mainly has a gradient of that tone. I'm not saying color per se, because color can be dangerous. Like, colors have different undertones, so that's why I'm saying, like, very often to me a monochromatic palette is like, it's an all blue palette, but within blue we can get different tones, but all the tones do still match. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm making sense at all, but that's what we're doing today. I'm saying it's a top 10, but there will be one honorable mention. However, that's an eyeshadow palette I haven't tried yet, so I didn't want to like recommend it, but because it's one I'm super excited for trying, I thought I could throw it in here. And the eyeshadow palette I'm super excited for that I haven't tried yet, so let's kick things off with the honorable mention straight away, is this new guy. This is the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions 2, and this is a monochromatic purple palette. It's not entirely monochrome because we get one warm tone in a sea of blue tone purple. So this is almost monochrome. It's not exactly monochrome, but they are still all purples. That's the way I feel about this. And I think this could be very well one of the best purple palettes that has ever launched. That's the way it lives in my brain. I have passed up on so many other newly released purple eyeshadow palettes that we've had in recent years. Cosmic Brushes did one. There were, I think, one or two more releases last year, and I didn't get any of them. And the reason why I didn't get them is because I have a all purple palette that I really enjoy already, so I don't really feel I need all of them. The reason why I was interested in this is because it was mostly blue tone purples, and I love a good blurple. A blurple and me, we're usually the best of friends, so that's why I really wanted to try it, because a lot of brands, when they do purples, they make them pull very pink or red, making them very warm toned, which isn't always the most flattering type of purple on my skin tone. So I love these cooler tone, more blue leaning purples for myself for sure, and I love the Melt formula. So I knew it was a match made in heaven, the Melt formula with all purples, and then the lovely Esther, one of my subscribers, let me know that she was going to send me this way because she had ordered one extra for me. And I was like, thank you, because that was one that was definitely on the wish list, but I was going to wait for this to like get to a place where I could order it from a little bit more easily. But apparently she had some sort of code, or she was getting something else, and then she was like, I'll throw it in for you as well. And then she sent it my way the other day, so I finally got my hands on this, and I can't wait to play with this and see what it does on my eyes. But like I mentioned, we're not just going to go into colorful things. There are colorful things here, but I think a good neutral. And these little quads from Zoeva, nobody was talking about them. But I think one of the reasons why is because they're quite monochromatic. This is the beautiful Bright Eyes, which is one of the lightest ones I have, and also one of the most monochrome ones I have from the entire lineup. This is really beautiful. It's giving Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk without the price point, because this is like half the price of Charlotte. half the price, half the price. But the formula, wowza, it's gonna blow your socks off. This is one of the best formulas I have tried from a brand in recent years. Zoeva is so incredibly slept on. The only problem with these palettes is that everything is pretty much like this. It's very monochromatic, nothing really stands out. There isn't even anything that's too dark to really deepen things up, which is, if you like your dark and dramatic sort of looks, this is probably not going to be your vibe. But I really like this, and I figured the minute I decided I was going to do this video, I was like, right, this is something I need to tell them about yet again, because these Zoeva quads are amazingly good quality and nobody talks about them. But if you're looking for a monochromatic look in a very neutral undertone that skews a little bit more warm neutral-esque, this is effortless eyeshadow in a quad. It just really, really is. And like I mentioned, it's Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk, but at half the price point. So if you don't want to shell out 60 euros for a quad, try this because it's really good. Shall we do the neutral things first? Because there's only a few truly neutral things in here. Case in point, this. This thing is called the Monochromes. It's by Glossier. This is in the shade Mist, because this is my favorite of the two I have. I also have Jute, which is like the taupey brown one, but Mist is your mauvey purples. And these are set up similarly to what the Zoeva has to offer, minus the very light lightery shade. These palettes all have 3 shades that all fit within the same sort of colorway. But you get a matte, a shimmer, and a metallic. Super pretty. You can glam it up with the metallic shade. You can do something very natural with just the matte shadow by itself, or maybe dabbing a little bit of the shimmer all over the lid. This is really pretty, easy, foolproof, so easy to use. And all of the, like, this is Glossier. This is not going to be boom kapow in your face, super pigmented shadow. This is like that wash of color. If you don't love that, you're probably not gonna like these, but since I like it very much, this is one that instantly came to mind. They're called the monochromes for a reason. So in terms of monochromatic eyeshadow, I think we tend to think of colorful palettes really quickly, because that's what a lot of brands tend to do when they do monochromatic eyeshadow palettes. But I think that Glossier really killed it with this range. They do a really pretty green one as well. I think it's called Prairie. They do a bunch of really good warm tones ones as well. So if you don't like this very cool toned option, I just have the 2 cool toned options, because really, let's be real here. We need to stay within the comfort zone sometimes. But if you do really enjoy these like orangey, spicy shades, they have that too. And the finally truly neutral thing, and I'm not sure if people consider this to be a monochromatic palette, but to me, because it was also released back in the day when ColourPop was doing nothing but monochromatic palettes, I feel that the That's Taupe is a good good competitor here as well. So the That's Taupe, in case you don't know, I still like the packaging for some reason, is a monochromatic taupe palette. I've tried so many taupe eyeshadows in my day. I love a taupe eyeshadow. You guys know that about me. This, I feel, is no longer that taupe in my brain. There are things that I think are better as a taupe. This is mostly like browns with a hint of gray, which could be a taupe, but like something like this is just, it's not taupe. This is a bit too purple, but it could work. And this is, for instance, a little bit too warm toned for it to be a true taupe on my complexion. But there are definitely taupes in the palette. So for the spirit of it being a taupe palette, I definitely think I like it a lot. It's one of the very few monochromatic color stories from ColourPop that I haven't destroyed. Once you see my eyeshadow palette videos later this month and my palette collection for sure, you're going to see that most of my ColourPop palettes I have been fused together, rearranged, because with ColourPop you just get so many duplicates if you have a couple of their palettes that it just becomes really boring really quickly if you don't rearrange things. And a lot of their palettes are magnetic, so it's very, very easy to rearrange them and to reconfigure your palettes into a color story that does work for you. And my philosophy is I have an eyeshadow palette that needs to, an eyeshadow palette collection that needs to function in my life in the way I like to use my products, and not just for it to exist online. I know some people hate it when I show my rearranged palettes, but I just exist from the, I come from the I come from the standpoint that I want my eyeshadow to work for me, and I'd rather manipulate things in a way that it works for me than it going unused because I'm not inspired by it. That's the trade-off for me. So yeah, the That's Taupe is one that I haven't felt I needed to rearrange, so that makes this ColourPop color story a little bit more unique in my collection for sure. And I think it's still a really good monochromatic leaning color story for sure. I just mentioned rearranged palettes, and that made me think I have to show you guys this one. The purple palette that I have in my collection that for it to beat all purple palettes is the Flight Club from Menagerie. However, I made this more purple. Yes, I'll pop a picture of the original color story up on the screen so you can see what it looks like if it doesn't have these shades in. But long story short, I used to have the violet ink. I still have the packaging somewhere, I think, and I kept the shades I put in this palette as well. So I still have the shades that are originally in here. There were 3 shades I replaced. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was these 2 and this one, something like that. There were these really warm tone neutrals in it, and this is what I mean when I say purple palettes pull to warm tone. This is a warm tone palette, purple. This is a mauve, but it is strangely warm. This is very pink on me, and this is almost a red. The other ones work, but what I have changed out are some of the blue tones that were from the violet ink, and those are in here. So I feel the original palette was like a 50-50 split between warmer purples with those warm tone neutrals that were in here and those bluer tone things. And I felt that the blue tones didn't really combine with the warm tones. So that's why I kept the few warm tones that do work for me in here, but I've added more blue tone purples to make this more of a blue tone purple palette. Say that 10 times fast. Blue tone purple palette. Sorry, I sound like a broken record, but yeah, I now have the Melt, so I'm really curious to see how that's going to hold up against this, because this has been my favorite for years. And when I think purple palette, I think this. I've definitely decluttered other purple palettes in favor, like keeping this in favor over those. I think I have only one other purple palette that's a complete monochrome from Glamshop, and that one isn't my favorite because it's very warm toned. So yeah, this one, the Flight Club from Menagerie with those added violet ink shades, has been one of my favorites. You can still buy the original violet ink, Flight Club, I believe. The violet ink has been discontinued. Am I saying that correctly? I think this one, this packaging with the original color story is still available. I'll make sure to have some links in the description box down below for those of you who would like to shop any of these that you can still get, because I know plenty of these are discontinued. So if they're discontinued, there won't be a link, but if there's a link, then you can click and shop through my affiliate program, and I could make a small commission if you want to. I have 2 blue palettes in here, because I think if I wanted to do a blue look, I tend to think of these 2 instantly. The one that was in my Shop My Stash for July is the bubblegum from BH Cosmetics. Of course, this Sweet Shop collection is long since discontinued and you can no longer buy it. But this was the first blue tone palette I really fell in love with. And I think that this idea of a monochromatic palette is most visible in this, because you go from light to dark and then you have these different blue tones. The one that I like best that isn't really blue is this shimmer here, because that's more of a teal. It's more teal. It has a lot of green running through it. Officially, a teal is a type of blue, though, so that's why it makes sense in a blue tone palette. But I feel that, for instance, in these shades, you really get this really nice gradient just from light to dark, and there isn't a lot of difference in the undertones that they have. Like, nothing in here is super gray, or like blues can have different undertones too. And this navy is really, really good for a navy smoky eye. These 2 shades together are stunning, actually. I love that we got 4 shimmers, 4 mattes. It's just really, really nice, and I love the setup of going light to dark. It tickles my brain when palettes do these things. But the one that has kind of replaced that one for me is the Niebieski 2020 from Glamshop. This is a Polish indie brand that only do limited edition eyeshadow palettes. So this is long gone. You can no longer buy it. Some of the singles were around for a little while, but I don't think you can still get any of them anymore. There are a few shades that crumble a little bit, so I feel it's very fragile, but it's okay. And this I feel, and maybe it's also because of the blue background, that could be what tricks the eye, the background of your packaging definitely influences how things look to you. But I feel this looks more monochromatic than the BH Cosmetics. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be different. You could feel differently. The white has a blue flip, so that's why it still works in that gradient of going from light to dark. It's a little bit more sparkly. It adds a lot of texture. We get 4 shimmers, 5 mattes, and again, a super incredibly deep, saturated, rich navy blue that I just love. And I love that this has an actual deeper blue shimmer. The deeper shimmer that we get in the BH Cosmetics is that teal, and that's the only thing we really get. However, this also has something that could pull a little similarly to that teal shimmer. I feel they're similar, which is why I feel they are different. That's why I still have both palettes in my collection. But I also feel that these mattes are also like a perfect, like, one step up from the next. It goes from a sky blue to a more saturated royal blue. There's a bit of a duck egg kind of quality to some of them. You just really, really get a good array. But I definitely do think that some of the blue in the background of the packaging skews this to look more monochromatic than it actually is. I wasn't sure where to put this, because is this a neutral or not? I think to some people this can be a neutral palette. To other people it's going to be a gray palette. And the palette I'm mentioning, I was umming and ahhing so badly between my ColourPop Blowing Smoke / Smoke Show, whatever it's called, and this guy. But I went with this because I like the formula a lot better, and I can see myself wearing this a lot more. And this is the Ghostface Lives Halloween whatever palette from Glamlight. And this essentially is a gradient of grays. There's a little bit of taupe in here as well, but essentially it's 15 shades of gray. Not 50 shades of gray, but 15 shades of gray. Because it's all rendition of a gray, and sometimes it's got a bit more brown in there. There's a couple that have a bit more purple in it. This is a little bit more blue leaning, but they're all cool tones. They're all gray, and we're going from very light to very dark. You catch my drift? So to me, this kind of fits into the same vein as the That's Taupe, but this is more cool toned. And I know I also want to give you some cool toned options, because we all know I love a good cool tone. This is one of the best cool tone palettes I have tried all year. I really enjoy this. And this has made me fall in love with Glamlight, which is something I didn't think I would ever say, because the first time I tried them, I didn't love them. But ever since trying this palette, I've tried some more. I'm like, yep, I now totally get the hype. I understand why everybody loves this brand so much. And for an indie brand, they're quite affordable. So I also want to make sure to have like different price points in videos like this, and I definitely think the Glamlight one is a good one. Again, something that could be neutral to some people, but to other people this is going to be a rosy toned palette. And my favorite rosy toned neutral, like monochromatic extravaganza, is by Melt. They do really good monochromatic color stories. And this is the She's in Parties. This is a stunning palette. I used to own the stack, so my love for this palette goes way back. But this is even better than the stack was, because this has these really light shades, and those I need for my skin tone for this to work, because this is quite dark. Like this was always already in there. And then of course we have the shade She's in Parties, which is the only warm tone. Like this is pretty much the only true warm tone. Everything else pulls quite cool. Yeah. And I think, what else did we get? We did get Last Caress, and then the Skeleton Kiss. Those were the 4 shades we got in the original stack. And then these two, and this one, and this one. So essentially the lighter, like cooler tones, those 3 were new to the palette. And I really don't regret this. This is really pretty if you have darker skin than I do, but I can make it work as well. It has that gradient going from light to dark, having all of these renditions of like a mauvey, rosy tone. but without it being overly pink. I feel like sometimes rosy tone palettes on me can pull a little dusty rose, and I don't always love it. Because this has so many cool undertones in a lot of the shades, I feel it works better for my complexion for that reason, and it's why I rate this one so highly. It is definitely one of my favorite Mel palettes in my makeup collection. So yeah, the She's in Parties is another really good one. I'm not sure, do they still do this? I don't know. I hope they do, because this is really good. And then, of course, we also need to talk green, because I do love a green palette, and I have several. I have several green palettes. And then I was thinking, Glamshop do really good green palettes. I've got two, but I already showed you the blue one, and I think the blue one is one of my favorite palettes by, Glamshop to begin with. So I was like, the green ones are really good too, but both of them discontinued. I have the green pistachio palette from the Sweet Shop collection, so similar to the blue one from BH Cosmetics. But then I was like, this. I think my love for monochromatic eyeshadow got started with this. This is one of the oldest monochromatic palettes in my collection, and this is the Huda Beauty Emerald Obsessions. Of course, also discontinued, because apparently my favorite palettes are always the one that brands do away with, for some reason. Very strange. But this is so pretty. I really, really enjoy this color story. It doesn't pull as monochrome as I'd like it to, though. But then again, I don't think I've ever tried a green tone palette that does like the same sort of gradient from just like light to dark green. I don't think I've ever seen that. There's always a mix. With green palettes, they always insist of doing warm tone and cooler tone greens. Case in point, warm tone greens, cooler tone greens. So this does have a mix. I like this dark green. I really like this like grayish, cocky gold hybrid sort of thing as well. It just has a lot of really good shades. I wish we didn't get a gold though. That's the only downside here. But in terms of like another brand that I can show you here, because I also want to make sure there's a variety of brands in these videos, I thought the Huda Beauty could make a good addition. And the final palette I want to show you today is by Kaleidos. This is the Glowing Iris eyeshadow palette. And Periwinkle eyeshadow, it's my love. Periwinkle, navy, taupe, some of my favorite shades on the planet. And this, it's so pretty, but it's also pretty periwinkle. And periwinkle has to be your thing. It's not for everyone. I have a monochromatic periwinkle palette from Glamshop, but that's not a standalone. I cannot get a full periwinkle look. I also have a couple of beautiful periwinkle shades in a very old Inglot Singles palette. Those are some of my favorites. But if I'm thinking periwinkle monochromatic, this. It's bright, it's vibrant, this shimmer is amazing. It's got something to really sort of blend with these lighter shades as well, but it's so pretty, and it's sort of like, is it purple? Is it blue? Is it... That's the definition of a periwinkle for me. So this is incredibly monochromatic. You could see there wasn't even a lot of definition between light and dark in this, so it all is going to like play on a very similar level, which makes the color story very limiting in what it can do on your face. But so pretty. So, so pretty. This is a very pretty thing indeed, and I don't think many brands do colors like this, and Kaleidos did it really, really well. So there you have it. Those were my top 10 favorite monochromatic eyeshadow palettes in my collection for sure. I do apologize for there being discontinued palettes in here, but you will find as we get through this month, there are a lot of discontinued palettes in my makeup collection, and I don't feel the urge to get rid of them just because a brand no longer sells them. If I love it, it gets to stay. So thank you so very much for being here. I hope you would like to join me again for another video tomorrow, because remember, I am posting every single day in August because of eyeshadow palette month. So if you'd like to come back for more, in the meantime, there is a giveaway going on the channel as well. So just a gentle reminder, I will make sure to link it in the description box down below. And then I hope to see you again tomorrow for a new video in eyeshadow palette month. Thank you so very much for watching today. Take care and have a good one. Bye.